Hello, this is Bill Meridian speaking to you today from Vienna, Austria. It is December 24th, 2018. Merry Christmas. This is the beginning of a series of presentations based upon my book, Mastering Geopolitical Prediction, Applied Mundane Astrology. And this first presentation regards horoscopes of diplomatic relations. You can cast horoscopes for countries, horoscopes for their leaders, for the dates they come to power, and also for the establishment of diplomatic relations between countries, which I'll explain the source for these dates and how to work with them in the coming pages. First, we have an eclipse coming up in the first week of January. And to get some clue as to where one might look in the Earth, we look to its shadow. And you'll note it is highly visible in China. It goes out over the ocean and ends off the coast of Alaska. So you could say that this does connect the USA and China, but it most certainly activates China and turns the head of the mundane astrologer in the direction of that ancient country. The upcoming January and July solar eclipses both impact the horoscopes that relate to USA-China diplomatic relations and trade. The eclipses are 15 Capricorn 25 on January 5th and 10 Cancer 37 on July 2nd. So, as eclipses habitually do, they oppose each other in space. This time it's 15 Capricorn in January and 10 Cancer. So, as readers of my book about eclipses know, solar eclipses begin having an effect about 3 months before their actual occurrence. So that would mean we would take 3 months off of January 2019 and come up with October 2018. And they can have an effect as long as a year afterwards. So if you add 1 year to July 2019, you go well into 2020. These were general guidelines developed by my teacher, Charles Jane. Now, any countries, people that are sandwiched between these 2 degrees will get hit by one eclipse and then by the other. So this keeps the news, this keeps the energy heated up. It keeps those degrees hot. It keeps the action going, as we'll see. These degrees are shared degree areas, and these horoscopes of U.S. and China. China and the USA first established diplomatic relations on June 16, 1844, one day after the partial solar eclipse of June 15, 1844 at 25 Gemini. So that eclipse has a great deal to do with future relations between the two. Now, shortly after that eclipse, on July 3rd, and this is only 2 weeks after the initial diplomatic relations, they signed the Treaty of Peace, Amity, and Commerce between the United States of America and the Chinese Empire. Key word here being commerce. It was a trade treaty. What is the issue right now? Trade. It became a hot issue last summer in 2018. Then we must consider another chart. Relations with the old Red China were broken, but then reestablished on January 1st, 1979. So now we have 3 horoscopes to consider. It's pretty easy because there is a shared degree area between the 3 charts. Here is the first chart. June 16, 1844. You'll note the moon is just past the sun. That degree at 25 Gemini had just been eclipsed. And note the position of Mars at 10 Cancer. And if you're not into the Uranian system, I'll give you a brief explanation. That funny symbol that looks like Jupiter in Gemini next to Mars is Apollon. Apollon has everything to do with free trade. Every great free trade economist has a strong Apollon. It means widespread. It means many. Jupiter is big. Apollon is many. It means widespread. Opposite that, you'll see another symbol, 11 Capricorn 08. That is Hades. Hades is the lower self in the horoscope. It is everything that we don't care to deal with in life. It can represent negative intentions, garbage, objects that are disposed or considered useless. And if you may remember, China has been accused of dumping shoddy products, of shipping food products that are tainted. Well, that would be symbolized by this axis. Apollon, the distribution of what? Tainted products, or even copied products. The theft of intellectual property. So that is very telling. Let's look at the next chart. USA-China first treaty, that was on July 3rd, 1844. Now look at the Sun at 11 Cancer. Mars has moved up to 21, and we still have the Apollon-Hades opposition strong. And you'll note that Mars is now square Pluto at about 24 Aries. So this looks like a fairly contentious relationship. Let's move to the third chart. U.S. and Red China reestablished diplomatic ties. Now look at the Sun, 10 Capricorn, and look at the Mars. It is 15 Capricorn, right next to the asteroid Pallas at 19 Capricorn, and they are both square Pluto at 19 Libra. The Sun in this chart at 11 Capricorn obviously ties into the two preceding charts, and it opposes that symbol at the bottom, that is Vulcanus, which adds great power or strength to this relationship. Now, just recall the shared degree areas that we just looked at. Here I am going to shift tracks, and then I'll pull back and fully explain. These are past eclipses that opposed the USA Sun. This was something that I had not mentioned earlier in the presentation. On January 5th, 1935 and 1954, and on January 4th, 1973, 1992, and 2011, there were solar eclipses that opposed the USA national sun, which we all know from the July 4th, 1776 date is 13 Cancer. So the way I read that as a standalone is that there will be challenges to constitutional government from radical members of the Democratic Party, and as of this moment we have a government shutdown. Remember, the USA Sun at 13 Cancer is square the national Saturn at 14 Libra, so it has a lot to do with law and structure and holding everything together. Now, I had the 1954 and 1973 eclipses denoted because in 54, the Sino-American Mutual Defense Treaty between the U.S. and the Republic of China was signed. This agreement prevented the People's Republic of China from taking over the island of Taiwan during the years 1955 to 1979. The 1973 eclipse, significant, well, obviously due to Richard Nixon. He had visited China, he removed the troops from Vietnam. China was also in the news. The PRC and the USA agreed to establish liaison offices. This was the reverse of 1954's actions in Vietnam and in relation to China. The effect was of an opposition is to knock one down in stature, as was evident in the retreat from Vietnam, as was the Watergate scandal. Eclipses opposite the Sun tend to knock you down. Eclipses conjunct the Sun tend to strengthen the will. So, the USA and China in 2019, and you've probably already noted that the January 2019 solar eclipse at 15 Capricorn is conjunct Mars in the 1979 horoscope. Now, if you were looking at this last summer, you would deduct 3 months off of January and come up with October 2018, and you could reliably say that relations between the two would get very contentious. And we've just seen the Chinese executive, Wan Shu, arrested in Canada in December of 2018, and only in the last week the FBI has accused China of spying, stealing intellectual property, and so forth. So an eclipse conjunct Mars tells us what about upcoming relations between the two? That from sometime in October through into the spring, relations will not be good between the two. Then we come to the July solar eclipse at 10 Cancer. That is in July. So if you deduct 3 months off of that, you come up with April. Now note that Mars in the first 1844 horoscope is at 10 Cancer. The Sun in the second 1844 chart of commerce is at 11 Cancer. The Sun is at 10 Capricorn in the 1979 chart 10 Cancer, 11 Cancer, 10 Capricorn. The summer eclipse is 10 Cancer. This is the value of shared degree areas, and you'll note all three are being activated. So what is the likely outcome? Deduct 3 months off of July, you come up with April. Relations between the two will remain contentious until the spring, and the July eclipse will begin to have an effect in April. The eclipse is at 10 Cancer conjunct a fixed point, the North Helio node of Jupiter, so it gives it a Jupiterian flavor, which will be favorable for any entities that are energized by the eclipse. The eclipse is conjunct the natal sun of the USA at 13 Cancer, strengthening the national will. So now the odds are that it will be a favorable eclipse and favorable to the United States. The eclipse is conjunct Mercury in the charts of both the American and the Chinese presidents. So they'll be coming to some sort of an agreement. But the USA and Trump charts are better aspected than those of China and Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, who in fact has Saturn opposite his Mercury most of the year. So in any negotiations, he probably will not get everything that he wants. The situation will be resolved largely in favor of the USA. So what mundane principles from my book have we utilized to come up with this conclusion? Number one, maintain a large database. I have the horoscopes of every state of the United States, every president, their accession to power, all the countries of the U.S. This is fully explained in the book, and I keep adding to it and adding to it. I now have a whole file of horoscopes of diplomatic relations between the USA and all other countries. Two, I searched the shared degree areas. That's pretty obvious from the presentation. Also, it's a chapter in the book. Three, confirmation from other techniques. The sun opposite, or the eclipse opposite the American sun, was one of those other techniques. Four, you look at past activations. We did that back into the Nixon area and back into the Nixon era and into the early 50s. And number five, we projected into the future in light of the current situation. Certainly anyone knows what the situation is between the U.S. and China right now. Horoscopes of diplomatic relations, where do you get them? They're all listed at a State Department website, the Office of the Historian, and I give you the link right here. That is history.state.gov/countries. You click on that, and A to Z. They have several dates. Number one, they'll have the date of first recognition, when one country officially recognizes the other. I don't use those that much. Sometimes they're useful, sometimes they're not. Then there's the sometimes, not always, the setting up of a liaison office, which is a precursor to the establishment of full diplomatic relations. I tend to go with the full diplomatic relations chart. You will find, such as in the examples of Japan and Iran, that Commodore Perry visited Japan and signed the first treaty well before they established any official diplomatic relations. In that case, that chart is a powerful one, and I tend to favor it more than the subsequent charts. In the case of Iran, which was then Persia, there actually was very early diplomatic activity that predates the dates you see in the State Department website. Or you can send me an email to bill@cyclesresearch.com and put in the headline DR, capital D, capital R, which is diplomatic relation charts. And I have these charts in SolarFire version 9. I'll send the file to you. I also have it in Nova chart wheels, so you can use a 90-degree dial with the Astrolabe product. If you go to the website, that is the book, Mastering Geopolitical Prediction, Applied Mundane Astrology. Also, check out Cycles Research Early Warning Service, which covers the markets. So this is Bill Meridian. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and look for the next presentation in the coming weeks. Thank you. Bye-bye.